New York City in the 1960s was a battleground, but not in the way you might think. This was a war over the future of the city itself, a battle between two visionaries, Jane Jacobs and Robert Moses. Let's dive into the clash that redefined urban planning and shaped New York as we know it today. The story begins in the mid-20th century when New York City was booming. Robert Moses, the city's most powerful urban planner, was on a mission to modernize New York. Known as the master builder, Moses was responsible for many of New York's major infrastructure projects, from bridges and highways to parks and public housing. Over his career, Moses built 416 miles of parkways, 13 bridges, and numerous highways, reshaping the city to accommodate cars. Moses was a firm believer in the idea that progress meant wide roads, expressways, and suburban-style developments. He envisioned a New York that prioritized cars over people, and he was willing to demolish entire neighborhoods to make it happen. But there was one neighborhood he didn't anticipate encountering fierce resistance from: Greenwich Village. Jane Jacobs was a journalist, author, and activist who believed in the power of communities. Unlike Moses, Jacobs saw cities as ecosystems that thrive when people are encouraged to walk, interact, and live close to one another. Her groundbreaking book, The Death and Life of Great American Cities, published in 1961, challenged conventional urban planning theories. She argued that a city's strength came from its vibrant, diverse neighborhoods, not towering highways and isolated high-rises. Jacobs moved to Greenwich Village in the 1930s, a neighborhood known for its bohemian charm and tight-knit community. It was here that she would take on Robert Moses in one of the most significant urban planning battles in American history. The conflict reached its peak over a proposed project known as the Lower Manhattan Expressway, LOMEX. This expressway was part of Moses' grand vision to transform Manhattan into a car-centric metropolis. The 10-lane highway would have cut through the heart of Lower Manhattan, connecting the Williamsburg and Manhattan bridges with the Holland Tunnel. Moses claimed this would ease traffic congestion and boost the city's economic growth. However, the plan came at a high cost. It would have required the demolition of large swaths of Greenwich Village, Soho, and Little Italy, displacing thousands of residents and destroying historic buildings. The project threatened to uproot 2,000 families and demolish 800 businesses, erasing the cultural fabric of these neighborhoods. Jane Jacobs wasn't about to let that happen. In 1958, she began organizing protests, writing op-eds, and mobilizing the local community to fight back against Moses' expressway plan. Jacobs formed the Committee to Save the West Village, rallying neighbors to speak out against the destruction of their community. Her grassroots activism was relentless. In 1962, during a public hearing for the LOMEX project, Jacobs famously led a protest that disrupted the meeting, shouting, "The people have to fight Robert Moses." This bold move resulted in her arrest, but it also galvanized public opinion against the expressway. Jacobs argued that cities should be designed for people, not cars. She highlighted how vibrant street life, walkable neighborhoods, and mixed-use buildings were essential to a city's health and vitality. Jacobs' efforts helped shift public perception, proving that urban planning wasn't just for experts but also for the people who actually lived in the city. The tide began to turn in favor of Jacobs and her supporters. By the mid-1960s, the political climate was changing, and so was the public's attitude towards Moses' top-down approach to urban planning. In 1968, after a decade of relentless activism, New York City Mayor John Lindsay officially canceled the Lower Manhattan Expressway project. This marked a monumental victory for Jacobs and the residents of Lower Manhattan. Moses, who had once been untouchable, saw his influence wane. The defeat of LOMEX symbolized the end of an era where urban planners could bulldoze neighborhoods in the name of progress without public input. Jacobs' victory wasn't just about saving a neighborhood, it was a turning point in urban planning, ushering in a new era that valued community, walkability, and people-oriented design. So, what did we learn from the battle between Jane Jacobs and Robert Moses? Their clash reshaped urban planning philosophy in New York and beyond. Moses' vision of highways and high-rises gave way to Jacobs' ideas about preserving neighborhoods, fostering community engagement and promoting mixed-use spaces. In the decades that followed, cities around the world began adopting Jacobs' principles. Today, urban planners emphasize the importance of walkability, green spaces, and human-scale development. From the High Line in Manhattan to the revitalization of neighborhoods like Dumbo in Brooklyn, the impact of Jacobs' vision is evident. Even in cities like San Francisco and Boston, where highways once sliced through communities, efforts have been made to reclaim urban space for parks, bike lanes, and pedestrian-friendly zones. The battle between Jane Jacobs and Robert Moses wasn't just a fight over a single highway, it was a fight over the soul of New York City. Their clash highlighted the importance of community activism, public input, and the need to design cities for people, not just cars. Today, as cities worldwide grapple with issues like congestion, climate change, and housing shortages, the lessons from Jacobs versus Moses are more relevant than ever.